Now let us see what what role mining is and what how you can use this um, for getting the data out of the BRM system. Okay, so the role mining reports that you have is basically it's like your SUM report. For example, the action usage is your usage of transaction codes. Okay, so it's basically this is the ability to view role usage in an organization. Okay, role comparison, this is an ability for you to compare the role definitions between access control and your backend systems. Okay, so again, user to role relationship, we will see, you can compare user roles, right? You can see how many count authorizations within a role. Let's go and check each and one of them one by one. Okay. Now, action usage. Action usage meaning transaction usage. Okay, so the action means transaction, right? So let's click on this. Right? And all right, so let's pick our system and action usage. So meaning from this system, you want to see what all IDs have been, which user has used what transaction codes. Now, this list is not complete, right? We have been using some transaction codes today. So this list is not complete. So the prerequisite for getting the data in these reports, okay, action usage by user role or profile, because you can report by user role or profile, right, is that the synchronization jobs, okay, in the GRC system, they need to be run periodically. So because the data from the backend system has not been synced with the GRC system, we didn't see the data there. So that is one of the prerequisites that you have. You need to be careful. If you don't see the data in the role mining reports, it's possible that the jobs have not run. Okay, so let's quickly go and run that synchronization jobs. So in the synchronization jobs tab node, you need to run, let's run authorization sync, repository object sync, because we created roles, we created maintained authorizations, all of that. And then we created user IDs and assigned the roles to the user IDs. And then we executed the transaction code also, right? Let's click on, let's 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's run this 4 jobs. Okay, let's click on authorization sync first. Now, typically this should be run as a background job. Okay, you can run it on a daily basis. You can run it hourly. So it depends on how frequently you want to run. That depends on your company policy. Okay. Many companies that, they do it twice a day. Some companies do one daily. And there are also companies who do it on a hourly basis. Okay, some of these processes are going to take, the sync jobs are going to take time. So we have to be a little patient before we continue with the role mining reports. Okay, so authorization data sync job has run, took some time, but it ran successfully. Now, similarly, now we go and now we have to execute the remaining 2 also. Let's go and do it anyway. So let's go and select our connector. Let's do incremental sync mode, okay? Let's see what happens, because I don't want to run it in full mode and take time. Let's see how quickly this thing happens. If for some reason, data doesn't show up in the other reports, basically with the role related reports, we'll come and run it in full sync mode. But let's see what happens with incremental sync mode. Now, the first time, you know it already, when you run this report on the job for the first time, you run it using the full sync mode, but after subsequently you can run it using incremental sync mode. And then also all these jobs have to be run in as a background job. Okay. Okay, so the repository sync object sync job also ran successfully. Okay. Now let's go and run the other job, action usage job. Okay, let's pick your connector and say execute. Action usage sync successfully executed. Okay, let's go and now run a role usage sync. Select your connector and execute. Okay, so it just immediately did it. So hope it has done something. All right, so let's go back to role mining and let's do action usage. Okay, all this, the role mining reports are like your SEIM reports, okay? And if you know the user ID, if you want to filter by user ID, you can filter by user ID also. Let's look in the foreground. Now you see, you have a lot more data now, right? Okay, so what do you understand from here? So you're saying that, transaction XC01 was executed with this user ID. That's his name. How many times was it executed? 3 times. And there is a risk involved. Okay. Similarly, SecAdmin, we executed PFCG only once. And there is also a risk for that. Okay. So in this report, you basically see who executed which transaction code, how many times, what date, time, and if there are any risks involved in this. Okay, what risk is it? Okay, what risk it is going against. Okay. Now I'm just saying what else do you have here? Okay, so so this is a simple report of knowing who executed what transaction codes. Okay, when and the risks involved in the execution. All right, this is action usage. So you know by, let's say if I want to filter it by a user ID, I can add filter it with my user ID and see what all did I execute. Okay, so today I executed all these transaction codes. Okay, where is it? This transaction codes. Okay, so this is my. Now if I close this and if I go and execute a search for T dash, and you will see those other IDs that I had created and executed these transaction codes. Okay. All right. So the only thing you need to remember for this report to work properly is that your action sync job usage, these jobs are running. Role usage, action usage, all these jobs are running. Okay, so let's close this. Let's go back and say role comparison. Okay, let's compare two roles. Okay, you can add two roles here. So let's say I want to compare. It's a very simple report. We're going to do this. Okay, X colon, and we want to compare, let's say, the two security roles, right? This role, and then I also want to compare this role. Okay, so let's check what happens with this. Okay, we pick two roles. Say next. What all do you want to compare, right? You want to compare transactions and you want to compare the authorizations. Okay, now do you want to compare the roles which are in access control? Or do you want to compare the roles between access control and system? Okay, so let's go and compare with the access control first. And then what we'll do is we'll make a change to one of the roles in the backend system and see what happens. Okay, so compare the role in access control as an example. And let's go and run this in the foreground. See what happens. Okay, the security admin role has these transaction codes, okay? And the common transaction code between those two roles is SU01. If you scroll down, you will see the help desk, and help desk has SU01 in it, okay? Because SU01 is coming under common because it is there in the security admin role also, okay? And display action name, and descriptions. Now, if you go to comparison for permissions, you'll get all the objects, and and you also get what are the common authorizations in both the roles. Okay. All right. If you say display, then you'll also see the object descriptions. All right. Now let's go and say finish. Next. Okay. Next. What do you want to do? Okay. Next. So finish. Okay. All right. So let's do this. Okay. Let's go to the backend system. And now make a change to the backend system. Okay. So in this role, I'm going to add pivot 30. So role comparison. Okay, let's compare those two roles here, right? So add the role. Okay. Now let's go and do next. And you want to compare the role between access control and system. Okay, the backend system. Let's do this and say next. The foreground. right? So this one has PO13 in the backend system, and in the access control, in the backend system, it has got PO13, and in PFCG, you have PFCG and rest of the roles in the access control system in BRM. Okay, so go to next. Now synchronization type, you want to synchronize from access control the system, okay? Or you want to synchronize from back end to the front end system. So I would say access control to the system and then say generate profile, yes, and select the system done, right? The backend system. All right, so now say next and says submit. So role is generated. Now if you go to the backend role, right? If you see in PFCG, let's see what happens. We had added PO13 to that role because that role had got messed up in the previous step. Why is it not? So if you go to S_T code, you will have all the transaction codes here. Okay. All right. So let's go back to access control. Let's close this. All right. User to role relationship. Okay. Let's see what you have here. So select the system. And if you have the role name, that's fine. Let's say the user ID, right? Let's say T-SOD1, for example. Okay, there's no role. Okay, so let's take what is the user ID we have? Let's take this. So what does this report tell us? If you go and search for this user ID, it basically tells you the roles that are assigned to that user ID. Okay, it's like the data from AGR underscore users table. Okay, in the backend. So you have that user ID here and the role that is assigned to this user. Now let me go on to that user ID, right? Let's go and assign this role. Okay, in the backend system. Okay, so let's go and take that role and do the role assignment here. All right. So what was that user ID? T-SD admin. Okay. T-SD admin. Now the point is whether this will show up in that report or not, right? Let's see if it does. Because we made some change in the backend and the data that change is not synchronized with your access control system yet. Let's go and run it again. So you still have one, right? Okay. Assuming that we need to close and redo it again. Let's redo it again. Right? So user to role relationship, system, take your connecting system, RFC connection, and then user was T-SD admin. And in foreground. You still have one. Why? Because the data was changed in the background, in the backend system, you need to update the repository object sync job. Okay, so let's do this. Pick your connector. So anytime there is a change in the backend system, you know that you need to run these jobs. Okay. Close this and let's see if it works this time. Still not. Okay. Okay, let's close and see if there's any other job that we need to. No, this is enough. Let's do it again. Okay. Still only one role. So let's go and see. This user ID has two roles. Okay, it's got two roles. All right, so let's go and see why this thing is a problem. Okay, let's go and run this repository sync. Select the connector. Execute. Okay, it did something. So it said successful. Connector. Okay, why is it showing only one? Okay, so maybe, we should be executing all the jobs. The only problem with this job, it's going to take a lot of time. Okay, so this job ran successfully. Let's go and do the remaining ones also. I don't know why. This should have been enough, actually. We'll see. Uh, execute. Did execute very quickly. Let's go and run action usage, which I don't think is needed in this case for this issue that we are having. Maybe, let's restart connectors. Okay, so let's do this. So let's try this one more time. Close this. Okay. Let's go and say user role relationship. E dash as the admin, right? So let's see. It still says this. Yeah. Let's do it again. This time let's select the backend system and see what happens. Okay, now you see both the roles here. Okay, so some sync related problems. So anyway, so let's see. So this report is again like your it SUM, right? In the roles, you can go and pull this data out of AGR underscore tables also using SE16 transaction code. Okay, so this basically, okay, let's do this. Okay, let's do this by role now. So what is the role we have? Let's take this role. System. And this time, let's take the role. So run in the foreground. See only one. So the sync did not work. That's what it means. So if you go and do it again, and this time if you do it with the backend system, and this time you take the backend system, you should get two user IDs now. Okay, so you get two user IDs. Okay, so now let's go and check. So role comparison is comparing roles in BRM to an access control to the backend system or within the access control system itself. Okay, user to role relationship again, you can find out what roles are assigned to which users, either in the access control from data in access control, or you can check the data from the backend systems too. Similarly, you can search by role also. Okay, role relationship with user group. Let's see what this report does. Let's do this. And let's say by user ID, right? We didn't create any user group, so let's check by user ID. Let's take the same user ID that we are just trying as the admin and see what happens with this one. Foreground. Now you can see that it shows you that there are two roles that are assigned to this user. Okay, this again is like your SE16 AGR underscore users table. Not exactly, because you can search by user group also. Okay. All right. So compare user roles. So we can compare two user IDs, right? So let's say what we have, right? So we had, so let's take one user ID here, T dash. Let's pick two users, one user from here. Okay, let's take the backend system. Okay, so let's take the first role. Let's take help desk. And then the other one, let's take the security admin. Let's take security admin, okay, and run it in the foreground. So it basically tells you what role is assigned to the user and what is missing between the two roles, the roles that they get for the user ID, right? Which of those roles is assigned and which of those roles are missing. So for example, for help desk, right? User ID, the admin role is missing, which is assigned to sec admin. Similarly, for sec admin, um, the help desk role is missing, whereas it has security admin role. Okay, so you can compare this way, you can compare roles between two users. All right, let's go to the next option that we have. Count authorizations in a role. It's basically just a count, okay? So it just tells you how many authorizations are there in a role. So if you give this role name, for example, let's take this role name. Okay, good. Doesn't matter. And just say run in the foreground. It has 12 authorizations. Okay, that's what it does. Just tells you number of authorizations in every role, depending on what you select, okay, in the role name. All right, so let's go do this. And the last one is count authorizations for users. Same thing, except in this case, we are talking about users here. So user is, we take the security admin t dash sec admin. Okay, let's see how many authorizations this user has. It has 22 authorizations. Okay, so that's it. So this is all about role mining under BRM. Okay, so we have seen in this set of videos, we have covered the options under role management, role mass maintenance, and role mining. Okay, and we have seen also how to create composite roles, single roles, derived roles, business roles. Okay, and then we have also seen how to import the roles from backend system into the access control system, and then we tried updating a role. We did try updating, checking out how mass role risk analysis work, mass role generation works. Okay, all right. So this finishes on the role BRM tool of sets of videos.